Welcome everyone to the latest updates for Project from the Web. I'm Tim Runcie. I'll be your guide today, and I will be sharing my screen here so we can actually dig in and see some of the latest changes that have come from Project for the Web, and also some things that we can anticipate how you're going to use that, perhaps in what you're doing on a project, program, or even a portfolio level. So let's take a look at what we've got here. As you know, at Advisicon, we certainly help people with understanding how to use the technology as well as process. It's a lot of fun kind of mixing and matching the two. So for those of you that haven't met me, I've been around quite a while, but my name is Tim Runcie. I'm the CEO of Advisicon. I'm also a technologist and an architect, so I get to kind of work both with the Microsoft engineering teams as well as customers and trying to line out how to grow their culture of productivity. Today, we're going to be digging into kind of an understanding of where Microsoft's going with Project for the Web and some of the latest features that are coming out and will continue to come out. So I'm going to dig in with live demo, help you see the exact features, capabilities, kind of discuss those, as well as kind of making sure that everyone has the ability to plug in and get more as you need to. All right. So let's talk a little bit about the tool set that Microsoft has around the project, program, and portfolio spectrum. Now that's big words, right, for some people who are not project managers. So if you think about work productivity or helping make sure that things are being scheduled, done, tasks, deliverables, there's a wide spectrum of tools that Microsoft has, including using for Project for the Web. So as we look at the direction and certainly talking about, say, Microsoft's To-Do or Planner, you'll also notice that there's the legacy Microsoft project technology that sits in Project Online. Certainly some people use it on premise. And then there's Project Operations, as well as some things called Viva Goals. But the idea is that there's a stair-stepping process to help you get to what is the right tool for the job. Our focus is going to be kind of the bridging of what we call work management into formal or a little bit more organized project management. And that's where Project for the Web sits very well and continues to grow its capabilities. So today we're going to look at a couple things. One is what's going on with the new homepage. Certainly, as you think about importing old schedules or templates, there's actually some new enhancements that have rolled out, and I'm kind of excited to show those to you, as well as your ability to kind of jump in and begin filtering different board views or timelines. For those who've used Planner in the past, sometimes the board views get really long and convoluted with lots of things going on. So it's really helpful to begin to stay agile, have that kind of Kanban-esque or Post-it note-esque ability to have cards and move them around, but really to manage what you're working with, as well as creating custom number lookup fields, and also things like roll-ups or pick list. We even get into conditional coloring, kind of like the conditional formatting that you see in Excel. But the idea is that we're able to take a column and apply a condition, or at least make sure that things pop out so they'll watch and observe in your schedule. And as we think about our board views, we also want to organize so that people visually can pay attention to what they need to do. There's some new features called People, the People view, including the ability for looking at some of the charts. So this will be a nice enhancement for those that are digging in a little bit more around the resource management. And for those of you in the Agile space, we'll certainly also talk about prioritized backlogs and definable sprints. We're going to see some more evolutionary growth in this area. So without further ado, let's jump right into our demonstration. Okay. So let me bring up Project for the Web. In fact, let me back up a step here. I will take us right to kind of what we call the landing page. So the idea is that we have this home page, which is very much where you can kind of pick which project tech you're working with, whether you're going to actually build a roadmap or specifically you're going to add it from an existing desktop or a Project Online environment. You've got plenty of options there. In fact, for those that keep looking on the bottom, you'll notice that it says go to Project Online if you're dealing with the old legacy desktop or perhaps an enterprise environment. But what I like to see is that there's some new options. In fact, we think about how do we actually bring in our projects. Well, if I click on New, if you either want to start a blank project or you want to start a blank roadmap, these are very much in common use when people first started. But then people are like, well, listen, I've got a desktop application I want to bring in. So literally, if you want to click on Import the Desktop, you're choosing the .mpp file. Now, that's the legacy project schedule. Now remember, these project schedules have lots of different custom fields, and that may not all completely carry over into Project for the Web, as it has a limitation on the number of custom fields, as well as some of the dependencies or constraints that just don't exist in that tool because Microsoft's building it from the ground up. So whether you want to choose an MPP file or grab or look or find something that's easier to work with, the idea is that you can grab any one of these and bring them directly in. What's nice is you don't have to rekey, retype that, or try and copy and paste between, say, Excel or Project. I literally will just bring these in directly. Now, that was the approach with creating templates in the past. But what I'm really going to show you here is our ability to grab some of the existing templates that actually are being made available. So whether it's a business plan or employee onboarding, more of an HR side of things, or perhaps even getting into a marketing campaign. These are great templates that have a preset list of tasks, indentation, summary tasks, even have labels. In fact, I'm going to fire up one here real quickly for you to see. Now, where Planner came into existence, you think about that work management activity that says, you know, I don't have formal project management experience. In many cases, marketing team, finance teams, organizations, and HR really like the ability to have something that says, keep track of all the things that I'm doing, but I may have predecessor or successor relationships, meaning that I have things that I've got to do first, and I need to know if something's slipping. Well, we're seeing more and more people beginning to jump in and leverage these type of templates to help them continue to be productive without going all the way into, say, Project Desktop or Project Online. So I'm just going to grab this one here, software development, and notice it gives you a nice little picture here. And so, of course, you can click on Use Template. And when I bring it in, it'll actually launch. You'll notice that that's it. That's all you have to do. In fact, this is kind of what we used to start with, was simple schedules, as well as using some of the label features that we've used in other environments, for example, Planner, to help you pick and choose. These have all been kind of pre-colored and pre-labeled. Now, they're not the resource. These are actually just labels telling you who should be doing that type of work. But that's the idea, is that I actually can come in here, I can actually organize it or change it, but I don't have to start typing all of these things manually. So again, very exciting to see some of these, and I'm sure over time, back in the day, we used to all create templates and share them with Microsoft, and some of them made them into the general view that you would start with the legacy Project Desktop. Here we actually see a nice quick way to speed up our ability to add tasks or manage a project, but pick it up from scratch, saying you've got a template to work with. So it's not just about importing an old desktop. In fact, that's a great way to treat that as a template before. Here's some new ones that are coming into place. All right, so we talked about templates. Now, when we come into these type of views, the idea is that you may want to start filtering information. In fact, if you look in the upper right-hand corner up here, you'll notice that it says filters. And the nice thing is it'll give you many of the date fields that we have, as well as some of the buckets and standard fields that we can work with. And so as you look through here, you can actually come in and use these directly to say, I want to filter everything that has certain tasks. Or if I want to only look at, say, the design team, I can kind of check them on, check them off, literally using instant filtering right there on the screen. But there's some new filters that actually help us, especially as we begin looking directly into some of the other areas, including the board view. Now, the board view is kind of the old approach where we would go in and use that Kanban view, or for those of you that are familiar with Planner, what a great opportunity here. But if I look at my filters, same thing applies here. Notice that we can actually work from the grid view to the board view, including priorities. And as you go in here, and again, if I want to pick my low, my mediums, my highs, or any of the fields that I've assigned to me or to others, you can actually use this directly. And the same thing applies to our timeline view, again, keeping some of that functionality. Now, what's different about this filter is not just that the fact that we can go into our fields, or at least some of these custom fields that are available, but this is also where you'll find the critical path. And a lot of people say, well, you know, when I turn on a project, I begin linking and putting these together, how do I show that critical path? You can kind of toggle it off and on directly inside of your filter in your timeline view. And again, the idea is to being able to pick up quick, easy to use, and a light functionality that we go with when it comes to Project for the Web. Now we're thinking about filtering, but now in many cases you may want to drop back into, say, for example, a grid view. And I'm going to bring up a different schedule. In fact, I've got one I played around with some percent completes. I've got some resource names in here. It'll actually look a little bit more detailed. In fact, I even had fun here on the left-hand side adding different custom fields. So in many cases, if you do the Windows and the semicolon key, you can insert images or pictures right along here. They've got some short graphics that help to enhance some of the experience of what you're looking at. Now, when I come in here and thinking about creating a custom field, in many cases, the idea is that I've got this view that shows me information and I can scroll back and forth. But then if you're looking at more of the Excel experience, if you click on the grid view, we can drop back in and actually begin to look at what we call conditional coloring. And what's nice about conditional coloring, in fact, let me just cancel this so you can see that in the upper right-hand corner, but you've got this conditional coloring that says, hey, look, if I want to come into a field, I can pick something. For example, maybe I want to pick the bucket field. And what I'm looking for is the operator, meaning does it contain or does it equal something? In this case, it's very simple to start out with. We're not actually creating that same kind of complex formula we'll find in Excel with conditional formatting. But boy, if I say, hey, look, I'm looking at a text field, I can actually come in here and say, hey, it's actually able to read the lookups if you've built any of these fields directly. So if I want to come in and say, you know what, I want to see these different low priorities, and I want to see those as kind of a pink or a mauve. Let me save that. And as I begin to see here, I can actually spot things that might be low, or perhaps maybe you're coming back in here and you want to go back to conditional coloring, add that to your bucket field or a different field, and actually drop that in again. So let me do a different one for bucket. I'll just say, hey, listen, if it's equal to, and I'll pick another item here from the list, maybe it's high priority. And high priority, I really want to draw someone's attention to. I'm going to make it a flaming bright red. We can actually see these. And so you're able to use this conditional coloring to help you visualize some of that information. So if we're thinking of kind of also having that field, well, bucket's great, but what if I just want a totally independent field, meaning that I'm thinking of something different? At the very end, you'll notice that we have this add column icon right here at the very top. It's kind of the open-ended of the columns. And if you click on this, you're actually able to come in and pick, hey, I want critical, or I want dashboard, or explain yourself. These are fields that I've already built. But if I come in here, and again, I haven't shown all these, but if I come in and say I want a new field, I can actually come in and choose text, date, number, yes, no, or choice. Now, what's helpful about this, especially if I'm going to come in and say, listen, I want a choice field. The name of this is going to be called finance. And my choice might be CapEx. Let's do CapEx. We'll do operational expense, OpEx. And I'm going to make one here for NA. And then I'm going to go ahead and create. And that's it. In fact, as I drop it in here, now I can come in and actually click and pick on my activities. And I will see that I've got CapEx or OpEx. These will start playing into both, not just your visual views, your conditional formatting, but also now that we have the ability to start reading from the Dataverse, we can actually build charts and graphs reports, certainly using Power BI, etc. So dropping these in here, it's also helpful to note that they've added another capability. In fact, let me bring in here and get away from text. Let me go to a number field. And so while this number field might be, hey, listen, yep, I want a number field, and the name of my field, I'm going to go ahead and call this Max People. And when I come in here and create a number field, notice that I have a roll-up type. So we're beginning to start see some of the flexibility that we've had in the past with Product Desktop, where you could put in a conditional field, could do some sort of numeric value. We could also decide, hey, when I bring this together at the summary task, does it go to a minimum, maximum, sum, or in many cases, I want an average. What am I looking at? And this, I might be looking for an average number. So let me create this, and let me, in fact, take this column, which is so nice to take. I can just move it, drop it where I want it to go. And now I'm going to come in here and I'm going to just put in some numbers. So if I need 3, and this task is a to-do, here's a 2, 1, and how about we'll put 6 here. And the idea is that my summary task, you'll notice at the very top, is giving the roll-up. So again, the idea is that you can put in these numeric values to help you begin organizing, measuring these. And certainly if you're using Power BI or connecting some of the data that's there, You can have a lot more fun and do a lot more things with that. We'll cover that in a later session, but I want to make sure you're aware of some of the new capabilities that happen to be there. So we've talked about conditional coloring, certainly from a grid view, but let me switch over to a board view. In fact, board view, we're going to talk about some of the items in terms of how we group our information. So for right now, let me go to my buckets. And all you have to do is you hover your mouse pointer over any one of these. It'll actually give you the idea of I could do a backlog. So literally I can take each one of these, whether it's these manual buckets that I've called sprints, or perhaps I have a priority field that might be more important or less important. You can create some visual cues so as people come in, they can see the organization of that. Now, if we're thinking in terms of not just the organization of that information, the idea is that we also have the option to share this information as we assign resources to it. So remember, as we come back up here again, we have our filters. If I start to prioritize what's red or pink or blue, I can click these and it's an interactive interface, but it still gives you that organizational coloring. Something else that's new that I actually am pretty excited about, and we're going to actually have to do more on this as this is going to grow, is the people view. If you look in the center here where we have grid, board, timeline, charts, and people, in fact, you're going to see when you start hooking up like things like Viva Goals, you're going to see goals appear here. You're going to see other titles. But I have this people view that now allows me to start looking at, hey, I'm looking at all the resources that we have in this view. And you know what, while I'm looking here, I could certainly use an uncompacted mode where I can see more of the details. Or if I click on view options, I can say, don't show me anything that's complete. I want to kind of filter some of that information out. Or if I'm important not to just see the count of tasks, I may want to see total hours. I can toggle these right now to help me visualize, am I overloading a resource? Does one person have more or less than others? And I can actually look at what's done, what's also completed. In fact, you can see them right here. Same thing works if you want to drag and drop. You have the option to move them around to make them done or not done. The idea is that they'll start showing up and appearing. And that's one of the fun parts of Project for the Web is that the interaction is really easy to work with. So as we're going through looking at some of the functionality here, certainly the paper view is helpful. You certainly can see the options here in terms of view options in the view itself. And again, as you decide, you can certainly continue your grouping in the people view by priority or labels. Again, using some of the functionality that we found carried over from Planner directly into Project. And again, if I want to group by finish date, but again, using my people view. Now, people view is just one of the pieces, but if you haven't seen the new charts, we also look at the overall picture of, hey, how many tasks are in progress? How many are open or left to be done? And the idea is I can go in and again, same thing applies. I can certainly look at what's in progress, what's happening this week, or certainly look at by priority. But again, the idea from the charts view is it's looking at the bucket list. It looks at the effort by person. And again, I can kind of toggle these if I want to highlight them. It's nice you can actually see what's done or not done visually in the view. So very interactive. Not quite the Power BI experience, but very much the same of some of the new modern reporting capabilities is that we now have charts embedded directly inside of here. All right, one of the other things that's come up, certainly as we think about looking at the effect, whether it's the charts or views, is that calendars. I've had a lot of conversations about how do I deal with different types of calendars. Well, one of the things that Project for the Web has the ability to pull in and actually start leveraging is something called bookings. I'm going to do a whole session just on bookings, and that's something that where you'll go out and you'll set that up, but you can actually compare your groups together and use that as a calendar. But right now, let's say you're managing a team and you want to go back overall, you can bring up what's called the project details. And so when I click on this ellipses up here about the project, I can come down. I can also choose that, hey, listen, I have a custom work schedule. Maybe we're a weekend shift and we don't work on Monday, Tuesday. And the idea is I can hit apply and the overall calendar will adjust itself based upon what days are working days. Now, this is a quick way to just say globally, this is how we'll set this up. But if you're creating recurring tasks or activities, you can do this directly. Again, we'll talk about templates and the ability to draw in external calendars, or maybe you've loaded all your holidays in, depending on whatever country you're working in. But there's a lot more that's coming here to begin to make this much more of an enterprise experience. And remember, Microsoft's goal is to use Project for the Web as a modular tool inside of, say, Dynamics or other places. So you're going to start seeing modular components begin to work together, where Microsoft isn't trying to build everything into one tool as they did back in the 90s and 2000s and 2010. All right, as I'm looking at new features, there's a couple more I want to show you, and that's really where we set up what we call our sprints and our backlogs. So let me drop into a board view here. And board view, very commonly, we used to in the past have to type in sprints. Like you'll type in a sprint here and you'll type all your sprints. But I want to show you something that's new. Instead of trying to make your buckets be sprints or be groupings, what you can actually do here is look at this new grouping called sprint. And if you look closely here, you can actually create what we call the default sprint, right? Here's the default sprint, and you can actually set the window of time for what your sprints are. So for example, if I say this is my default sprint, or if I want to say this is sprint, let's call this planning sprint. And notice it's designed here to be a window of time. So I go from the first to a month. Maybe I don't fully need a full month here, but you know what I'm going to do is I'm just going to say, hey, this planning sprint is going to be 10 days. And as I add these, I can actually put more in here. Now my schedule actually is in the future. So I'm actually scheduling this in the past. That's why it's giving me a nice little flag up here that says, hey, wait a minute, that's not the right date to put back in there. But again, think of it this way. As you put in your sprints, you can put the default in terms of defining what is the range that you want to work with, and then you can manage these. And of course, between your backlog, you can drag and drop these. But now instead of having to use buckets for that, we can actually do that with its own sprint capabilities. So the idea is, again, if you want to go back over here and filter, put in by a label or by priority, you actually can select these as you flag them. And again, it'll apply that filter where you can actually drag and drop to the sprint. So we're using a whole series of, let me just say this is sprint 1. And I'll just leave it where it is here. Let's move that out. I think the schedule is out in October, or maybe it's in August. I'll play around here a little bit here. But the idea is that I can say, hey, look, I'm going to move this out and we're going to make it a little bit more in time. So there we go. So we look at our sprint 1 for our planning sprints. Again, I can drag and drop these. But now we're beginning to start seeing some of the native capabilities that are in the desktop, but very quickly, very easily in the Project for the Web and in this online experience. So again, as you move back and forth and we play with these, or if you're actually getting started here learning some of the new features, there's some great new elements coming out. I'm going to have another webinar about what's about to release. I'm going to talk about how to stay on top of Microsoft's roadmap, as well as some of the other things that are coming out and what they will actually mean. And then, of course, when they do come out, we'll do a demo for everyone. Well, listen, it's been great having you here. In fact, I appreciate kind of the overall picture. So we learned today a little bit about the new features in terms of some of the cadence that's going on. We can actually pull templates in and use or standard templates that come from the home page when you actually launch Project for the Web. Again, you got lots of filtering and timeline views, as well as some of the ability for custom fields, roll-ups, and the ability to put that conditional formatting. So we're getting a much more visual stimulating experience, especially when you're on a mobile device. It's nice to actually have the right things jump out with you. And with the Microsoft People view in Project and certainly the charts, you're beginning to start seeing some of the analysis actually right there on the screen where you can work with it. And for those of you that are in the Agile experience and are thinking more about how to manage kind of the work in that Kanban or sprints, you're actually seeing some new features around setting up your default sprints, looking at the window of time, as well as growing and scheduling, not just trying to make your labels, your buckets, actually do some of that together. So thank you for your time. This has been great to actually present this to you. I hope this was helpful, and I look forward to catching you on some other videos.